A federal jury in Green Bay convicts a man in a major fentanyl trafficking case. 29-year-old Ricky Chambers found guilty of conspiracy to distribute fentanyl and distribution of fentanyl. Prosecutors say Chambers traveled to Phoenix, Arizona to buy large quantities of the pills. He then shipped them to the Midwest, including the Green Bay area. In one instance, law enforcement intercepted a package with more than 55,000 fentanyl pills. Expert testimony revealed that 7 of 10 fentanyl pills tested contained a potentially lethal dose. Chambers is one of 8 defendants convicted in this conspiracy, which led to the seizure of more than 175,000 fentanyl pills. He faces up to life in prison, sentencing now scheduled for May.